Let me thank my colleague from South Carolina, and I look forward to him. He's going to be the ranking member of the Budget Committee. Got a lot of work to do, and I look forward to working with him. As Senator Graham indicated, in a few moments, at the end of my remarks, we are going to begin the Vote-a-Rama process, where senators can offer amendments with debate limited to 2 minutes. 1 minute for the proponents and 1 minute for the opponents. The last time I checked, I may be a little behind the times on this, my Republican colleagues have filed over 550 amendments, which theoretically means that we'll be here for days, but I think not. I have the feeling it'll be a very long night, but I assume we will get out of here at some point. Unfortunately, many of the amendments being offered have absolutely nothing to do with COVID relief, which, after all, is what this budget resolution is all about. My Republican colleagues have filed amendments to make President Trump's tax breaks for the wealthiest people in our country and the most profitable corporations permanent, which would provide a massive windfall to the top 1% and the billionaire class, who have already seen their wealth go up by over $1 trillion during this pandemic. To my mind, not exactly the kind of policy that we need right now. Republicans have filed amendments to exacerbate the xenophobia which exists in this country, despite the fact that many undocumented workers are doing some of the most essential and dangerous work in our country. They're working in meatpacking plants. They're preparing our food and working on the front lines, often with very low pay. We should not be attacking them. We should not be dividing this country up. We should be bringing our people together. We've had 4 years of efforts to divide us up. Now is a time for unity. Members of the Democratic caucus have made my life easy in this process because they have filed 0 amendments. Republicans, 550 amendments, Democrats, 0. And I think that speaks to the strong desire of our entire caucus to pass President Biden's $1.9 trillion emergency COVID relief plan as soon as we possibly can. And the reason we have got to pass that plan as quickly as possible is that the American people are suffering one crisis after another. And we have got to address those crises as quickly as we can. Let me briefly, I know there's a lot of media talk about $1.9 trillion and this, that, and the other thing. Sometimes we forget to look at actually what is in the proposal. What are we trying to do? What are the problems that we're trying to address? So let me just very briefly touch on some of the provisions of this budget resolution. First, and perhaps most importantly, it will enable us to aggressively crush the pandemic, which has already taken over 450,000 American lives. That is our top priority. Crush the pandemic and allow people to get back to work as we reopen and strengthen the economy and we get our kids back to school. And that is an essential part of what this resolution is about. This resolution will allow us to provide the funding to establish a national emergency program to produce the quantity of vaccines that we need. We don't have enough vaccines now. We need more, and then we need a process, which we don't have right now either, to get those vaccines into the arms of people as quickly as we possibly can. Mr. President, at a time when so many of our people are hurting, have gone through the worst year in their lives as a result of this pandemic, this budget resolution will allow us to keep the promises we made to the American people and increase the $600 in direct payments for working-class adults and their children to $2,000. That means $1,400 for every working-class adult and child in this country, an additional $5,600 on top of the $600 that we sent out a few weeks ago. Do you know what that will mean to millions of families who are worried about whether they can pay the rent or put food on the table? They will understand that maybe, just maybe, we are one country, and the government and this Congress has heard their pain. Passing this budget resolution will give us the tools we need to raise the minimum wage to a living wage of $15 an hour and provide substantial help to struggling small businesses to help them cover the cost of these wage increases. We do understand that restaurants and small businesses are hurting, and that is why we will provide billions of dollars to help them cover the cost of increasing the minimum wage. Well, let us be clear. The minimum wage in this country has not been raised since the year 2007. It now stands at $7.25 an hour. That is a starvation wage. That is an embarrassment, and that minimum wage must be increased so that we can give a pay raise to some 32 million workers. Moreover, Mr. President, this pandemic has caused tens of millions of Americans to lose their jobs through no fault of their own. For 45 consecutive weeks, unemployment claims have been higher during the worst week of the Great Recession in 2008. The budget resolution that we are considering this week will provide the funding to provide 18 million Americans with $400 a week in supplemental unemployment benefits until the end of September. So we're saying now to the millions and millions of unemployed workers in this country who, through no fault of their own, have lost their jobs, we are there for you. We're going to extend unemployment benefits to September and add another $400 on top of the benefits that you normally would receive. Mr. President, one of the disgraces that we have allowed to go on for so many years and not talk about it is the fact that in this country, the richest country in the history of the world, we have one of the highest childhood poverty rates of any industrialized country. And they're all over America. You've got single moms, couples, people trying to take care of their kids, trying to pay for child care, trying to do all the things that good parents want to do, and they're unable to do it. This budget resolution will provide the resources necessary to provide child care to 875,000 kids in America. This resolution will expand the child tax credit from $2,000 to $3,000 and $3,600 for kids under the age of 6, which, Mr. President, we believe will cut the child poverty rate in America in half, something we should have done 20 years ago. But that is what is in this resolution. This budget resolution that we're debating today would provide $350 billion to prevent mass layoffs of public sector workers in state and local governments. We've lost well over 1 million jobs, talking about teachers, firemen, cops, municipal workers. And this resolution will give states and local government the resources to not lay off workers, to bring those workers back so they can provide the services that their communities and states require. Mr. President, we are the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people as a human right. And right now, over 90 million Americans are either uninsured or underinsured. Imagine being uninsured in the midst of a terrible pandemic. That's the case, 90 million people. This budget resolution will enable the Senate to substantially increase access to health care for many millions of Americans, including, very likely, a significant expansion of Medicaid. This budget resolution will allow more Americans to receive the primary health care they need through community health centers. It will address the serious shortage of doctors and nurses in rural areas and inner cities by expanding the National Health Service Corps, and it will make sure that our veterans receive the health care they have earned and deserve by increasing funding at the VA by some $17 billion. In addition, Mr. President, in the wealthiest country in the history of the world, I don't think it is saying too much that people should not go hungry. And I, get emotionally wrought when in my own state, and this is true in every state in this country, in my own city of Burlington, Vermont, hundreds of people lined up in their cars to get emergency food packages. Many of them never in a million years would have thought that they would be in that position. We are looking at the highest rate of hunger in America in decades. And if this country means anything, if this government means anything, we are not going to allow our fellow Americans to go hungry. This budget resolution will provide nutrition assistance to tens of millions of hungry families with children, the disabled, and the elderly by providing billions of dollars for SNAP, WIC, and the Pandemic Nutrition Assistance Program. Mr. President, one of the outstanding crises this country faces is the fear of many millions of our people of being evicted from their homes or their apartments. Today, over 14 million Americans owe an average of $5,800 in back rent. We have a moratorium on eviction right now. But the day that moratorium ends, I fear that many, many people all over this country will face eviction. And that is why this budget resolution will provide the funding for rent relief, utility assistance, and mortgage relief to millions of tenants and homeowners who are in danger of eviction or foreclosure. In addition, this budget resolution allows us to address the terrible crisis of homelessness in America, where a few blocks away from here, in bitter cold weather, Americans are sleeping out in tents. Mr. President, not only is this $1.9 trillion emergency COVID relief package the right thing to do from a moral perspective and a public policy perspective, it is exactly what the overwhelming majority of the American people want us to do. They understand that if we are one country and they are hurting, now is the time to come together and to address that pain. So many of our people have given up on democracy. They've given up on their belief that government can work to help them. Now is the time to try to reaffirm people's faith in government. People want us to go forward. According to a recent poll, over 70% of the American people support President Biden's $1.9 trillion COVID-19 plan. 83% support boosting direct payments from $600 to $2,000. 64% support raising the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour, and 62% support additional unemployment benefits. In other words, what we are doing is the right thing to do, and what we are doing is what the American people want us to do. So now is the time to reaffirm the faith of the American people that their government listens to them, that in fact we are a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, as Lincoln talked about in the midst of the terrible Civil War. So now we can show who we are, and that is, instead of listening to wealthy campaign contributors and all of the lobbyists who flood Capitol Hill, let us stand with working families today, the elderly, the children, the sick, and the poor, who want us to stand with them. Let us pass this budget resolution, and let us then finish the job by passing a reconciliation bill so that we can get it to the President for his signature as soon as possible. Thank you very much, Mr. President, and with that, I yield the floor.
The clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Baldwin.
That sounds good to me.